Welcome in to the Need for Seeds, the inaugural Need for Seeds college basketball podcast hosted by pregame.com. I'm your host, real_G Warner, joined by at Big East Ben. You might see I'm playing a little bit of a road game today, but I do have a
Hey,
background of at Big East Ben and at the real_G Warner at last year's Final Four. We'll be there again in San Antonio, hopefully with more court access, while Ben has a nice floral arrangement behind him.
I'll make some updates.
So on today's episode, welcome at Big East Ben to the College Basketball Network at pregame.com. You might know him from the college football podcast, The Need for Screens. Well, The Need for Seeds is a college basketball podcast that started last season and was recording every week forever and ever and ever. We're still trying to figure out a podcast schedule, but we will be on the pregame.com network moving forward. At Big East Ben, he has given us a top 10 list as we head to the college basketball season, which starts even earlier this year on November 4th. And we'll give at the end of the show, of course, promo code to save on season lot subscriptions at pregame. Plus, we'll give out our national champion futures at the end of the show. We'll start with number 10 on the list, and it is the Kansas Jayhawks. They're currently 10-1 odds on DraftKings. You might as well shop around, but I'm not sure there's a lot of options considering most college basketball futures numbers are down at the moment, but DraftKings does have Kansas 10-1, and they've had a few changes this season.
So you're probably asking me, hey, Big East Ben, the AP voted Kansas number 1. Why are they 10 on your list? To be honest with you, Griffin, I don't think they're a top 10 team. I just wanted to put them on the list to rant about them for a little bit. So first of all, let's talk about the returning players. KJ Adams, you're good. I like your game. You're jacked. You're built. You're a ball player. Hunter Dickinson at this point is just playing out the string and trying to collect as much NIL money as possible and be the big man on campus for another year or two before he goes and becomes a used car dealership or gym teacher or whatever he has to do, because that guy has no future in the NBA. DeJuan Harris, I know he's a game manager as a point guard, right? But if the game was watching grass grow or paint dry, that is the type of game manager he fits into. If you put DeJuan Harris on Northwestern or Butler, do those teams improve at all? I don't think so. He is blah. He is blah, blah, blah.
He's blah, blah,
Now
blah.
it's
That's probably why he's still a Kansas Jayhawk for the 6th year.
exactly. Now let's talk about the transfer. So obviously Bill Self learned last year that a 4-man rotation doesn't exactly equal success in Division One. So they hit the transfer portal. It's headlined by AJ Storr. So this is the type of guy you're dealing with, AJ Storr. AJ Storr initially went to Kansas and said, hey, I'm worth $2 million. And Kansas said, hey, AJ, I don't know what Coleman Hawkins told you, but we're not Kansas State. That's a different school. So AJ Storr went and said, okay, F you guys, I'm going to go get what I'm worth, and eventually came crawling back and signed for, I think, a substantial less number. So that's the guy you're dealing with. That's your headline transfer. That's your team guy you're bringing in. The other guy, I mean, I've heard all about the Zeke Mayo from South Dakota State, and you know what all this talk is reminding me of?
Mayonnaise.
A certain Townsend transfer last year, Nick Timberfake. So I'm putting Kansas, on the edge of my top 10 just to kind of talk about him here, but it is a joke that the AP has continued to go through this Bill Self charade, who's in bad health, by the way. Let's not forget his health scare last year, and rank them number 1. So that end of Lawrence, Kansas rant. What do you think?
Well, I'm just glad Kevin McCullough's not on the team to quit right before the NCAA tournament, but that's probably better for Bill's Self's health as well. Move next to keep this show moving along to the Kentucky Wildcats, number 9 on Big East Ben's list, priced at 35-1 to win the national title, with Mark Pope coming in to fill the big-time Italian shoes of John Calipari.
This is probably the biggest stretch. AP voters put Kentucky at number 18. KenPom has them all the way down at 44. Shame on that weatherman. This Kentucky team is going to be good. They're going to be good. First of all, Mark Pope is an offensive genius. You saw what he did at BYU with Noah Waterman and Trevor Nell in the starting lineup. They were a top 10 KenPom team throughout the majority of the season. Jackson Robinson was an absolute star with those buckets of water around him. And who does Mark Pope bring in to support Mr. Robinson? Kobe Brea shot 49.8% from three at Dayton. 49.8%. That is not
bad.
With only DeJuan Holmes. Like, it wasn't like it was just DeJuan Holmes, and he shot 49.8% with those kind of looks. Kirk Creasa, West Virginia transfer. Before that, he was on Arizona, other sharpshooter. You got Lamont Butler at the point, San Diego State, hit that nails game winner against FAU in the Final Four. Experience there.
You don't need to tell me, I was there.
Yeah. And then, the front court's a little bit of a mystery. Andrew Carr from Wake Forest, Brandon Garrison from Oklahoma State. But know who works really well with big men? The head coach.
A big man himself. Who
turned a fat Egyptian at BYU into a pretty good player. So I love this Kentucky team. The numbers got them, the metrics got them all wrong. I'm all aboard the Wildcat Express. The folks in Lexington are going to be so thankful to finally see team basketball played at Rupp Arena. They're really going to get behind this team.
I'm sorry to the family of Ali Khalifa. I don't think he's fat. I think he just tries to use the big body, similar to like a lot of women's basketball players, where it seems like the big women there are just try to be as round as they are, as wide as they are tall. I'm very interested to see how Mark Pope does. Certainly not the dream hire for Kentucky, but maybe Coach Cal had worn out his lifetime contract and somehow went a little bit down the road and a little bit west to Arkansas for this beautiful season will begin. We'll move next to number 8 on at Big East Ben's list. A bit of a stretch, some might say. Marquette, 75-1 odds to win the title. And let's just say Ben and I have been to a couple Marquette games so far in our illustrious background. And almost went to another one last year in the Sweet 16, if not for Game Time, our least favorite app. We're just going to call it Gamete from now on.
I actually thought I had them ranked pretty equal to what the public expected, but that's just me. Marquette at number 8. So obviously a big hole to fill with future New York Knicks starting point guard Tyler Kolek leaving for the NBA, Oso Ighodaro getting drafted by the Suns.
But here's the thing. 2 holes. How many holes?
2 holes.
Okay. You said
Did I say one?
You said a big hole to fix. So I was like, okay, I just didn't know if it was like a combining or if it was. Anyway, keep going.
Multiple holes. But here's the thing, Griffin. Here's the thing. You know Tyler Kolek, before he was
Rhode Islander,
All-American starting point guard, future starting point guard for the Knicks. You know where he had to play out of high school?
George Mason.
George Mason. He was that bad he had to play for George Mason. Oso's even worse. Oso out of high school had to commit to a coach named Steve Wojciechowski. Even worse.
Tough draw.
So Shaka Smart is the greatest developer in Division I. You got Cam Jones. If you haven't already, put some money on 80-1 National Player of the Year. He's probably going to lead the division in scoring. David Joplin, yes, he needs to bounce back from the slump last year and return to the player he was 2 years ago, but I expect him to do so. Chase Ross is going to be fully healthy. He's the most electric player on the roster. And then expecting that Ben Gold, Trey Norman, and Zayd Lowry make that freshman, sophomore jump that all those guys I've mentioned before have done under Shaka Smart. This is going to be a legit team, and I like where they are. They're under the radar. They're not top 10 like they were last year, and they're not as bad as 9th in the Big East as they were 2 years ago, but I love the placement of this team. I have high hopes for them. I am very excited. I got my tickets yesterday for December 7th at the Bradley Center, Wisconsin, coming to town. Again, no skin in the game, not biased or anything. I just like good basketball.
Like good basketball. You like the Nevada Jones shot charts, which Nevada Smith, excuse me, my bad. A lot of Nevadas out there. Yeah, I feel like Marquette, they've been around the promised land. I mean, we've seen Shaka Smart clearly make a Final Four before. He took the Texas job and then forgot about the development or just really his style of basketball. But he's got a new style, and it's worked very well. And that makes Marquette the number 8 team at Big East Ben's top 10. Move next to a little bit more traditional of a top 10 squad. We have Gonzaga, which number 8 in Bart Torvik and number 7 in at Big East Ben's list. They are currently 18-1 odds to win. Wow, the national championship.
So Zags kind of had a tough year last year. Played a tough non-conference schedule. The game versus Purdue, hosted UConn, or the game versus Purdue was in Maui.
Yeah,
and then they were able to take care of Syracuse and UCLA after, but then hosted UConn in Seattle, got run out of the gym in that game. And then by the time they started the West Coast, they were like, I think they were unranked, the conference schedule. They ran through that.
So much for that.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't run through it as much as they did early years. They'd lost St. Mary's at home and then Santa Clara in Santa Clara. But again, that was a whole new roster. They had brought in Nemhard, they had brought in Graham Ike, and those guys are back, and there's continuity there. So that's what I'm really excited about. I like Ben Gregg now going in the starting lineup, 6'10" senior. They're going to be a monsters in the front court. And really, they only lose Anton Watson, who's a good player, but he's no Jalen Suggs. He's no Drew Timme, Corey Kispert. I was going to name some Adam Morrison, Ronnie Turioff, John Stein. He's not one of those guys.
Nice.
So Mark Few's a great coach. I like the continuity there going forward, and I think the Zags will return to the level that they were 2 years ago, and we've seen the last decade, and the level they achieved at the end of the season with what I thought was a pretty good tournament run when they blew out McNeese State, they blew out Kansas, and they ran into Purdue and kind of hung with them. But that was the Gonzaga team at the end of the year that I think you will see this year.
Yeah, they had to learn how to play together. Didn't start off the year well, but they always play tough schedules. That will work its way out, and they'll probably be healthier heading into the NCAA tournament than any of these other teams that actually have a gauntlet compared to Gonzaga, unless they join the Pac-12. But I think that conference is still not existent at this point. Thank God for no Pac-12 conference network games moving forward, hopefully forever in our lifetime. I'll move next to the Baylor Bears, who Ben has number 6 at Big East. Ben has number 6 in his preseason top 10. Baylor are 25-1 odds to win the national title. And somehow they were able to hold on to the dynasty that Scott Drew has begun.
Yes. Very thankful that God came down to talk to Mr. Drew and told him to stay in Waco. Because this team's legit. So you got Jaden Nunn coming back, absolute bucket. I'm shocked he only averaged 10.5 points per game last year, because whenever I was watching Baylor, he was in the mid-20s. Yep. Love the transfers. Jeremy Roach from Duke, Norchad Omier from Miami. Shocked that he transferred. I thought he was going to be a Miami guy for life. But love that. Well, yeah, that's true. It's Miami though.
It was either NIL or it was the beautiful beaches of Waco, Texas.
They used all their money on Nigel Pack. Is that the deal?
I think maybe he didn't want to play for a team that might not make the NCAA tournament. That's probably my guess. But you never know with kids these days, as they say.
Yeah. So. I mean, lost a little bit with Jacoby Walter, first round pick, and then Missy, the center, but
their other first round pick,
Jaden Nunn, Jeremy Roach, Norchad Omier, and then you got this Vijay Edgecombe kid, Bahamas national team, tore it up. I mean, besides the state of North Carolina, I think he's the best freshman in the country. So I think this Baylor team's going to be legit. It might take them a little bit to figure out. Let's just take a look at their non-con schedule. I mean, they play Gonzaga on Monday. I take Gonzaga in that game. They also play UConn. So St. John's, good game. So it might take them a little bit to figure it out, but I think they're going to be, a top 3 team in the Big 12 for sure.
Yeah, and then you have the Big 12 Gauntlet, which should offer plenty of home court advantage type of wins to build a case to get up there in the top 25 and to earn a big seed in the NCAA tournament. Speaking of the Big 12, we'll move to get juicy with Iowa State, 22-1 odds to win the title. I was pretty in love with the Cyclones last year in Kansas City. They were pretty much just even dominated the Houston Cougars, which no one believed would occur until you sat in that stadium and got to say Ames South, aka Kansas City, was pretty wild. No natural light to be found in that town. What do we got on Iowa State and TJ Otzelberger's tight shirts?
Yeah, so I mean, Otzelberger got the most out of that team. They played tighter defense than those polos. Tamin Lipsey is a stud, a great point guard, very steady, doesn't turn the ball over, and they force a ton of turnovers. They were the second highest turnover rate on defense in Division I last year. Again, last year was a more of a story where I think Otzelberger elevated the talent. And you also had Hilton Magic come into play big time. But this year, I think the talent is going to be better. And I think the talent is going to be better through the development of one guy, one of mine and yours favorite player, Milan Momcilovic. From the Amalfi Coast. No, he's from Wisconsin, actually. But wait,
hold on. Is Momcilovic, does that sound Italian to you?
Momcilovic?
Yeah.
What do you think? It's like Russian? Belarus?
It's some sort of like Bosnian or something like that.
Oh, Bosnian?
Serbian. But, I guess that is in the direction of the Amalfi Coast. Slightly different colored houses on the shores of Serbia or wherever the hell Milan Momcilovic is from. His name throws you off a little bit. That does suggest Italy. But a lot of the, I think you'd call it the Balkans name their kids Milan. Anyway, keep going.
Gotcha. Thank you for that history lesson.
You're welcome.
Geography lesson.
You don't get that everywhere except for the Need for Seeds College Basketball podcast.
Milan Momcilovic, our favorite Balkan, he's a stud. I think he could be on a Big 12 first team list. Absolute sniper from three, shot 42% or 36. Well, I mean, it's 36% last year, but I think that number is going to improve. That's pretty freaking good for a freshman. And they were kind of middling in the 3-point range. They're like 60th, so I think they'll get a boost there. The front court is kind of a mystery. You have Joshua Jefferson from St. Mary's. I didn't watch too much St. Mary's. It was like watching paint dry. And then Deshaun Jackson from Charlotte. I definitely didn't watch any Charlotte. So
come on. Charlotte was good for a while last year. Okay.
Were they?
They were. I definitely backed them against Davidson way back in the day, and they gave up like 11 3-pointers. So not that great that day, but keep going.
Well, I remember I would watch them when they were in Conference USA, when Conference USA was good with Marquette and Louisville. They were pretty good then.
Yes.
Well, we don't have to go back 20 years, but
they were also UNCC back then. Now they're just Charlotte.
They were. But again, talent's there, systems there. You have one of the best home court advantages in college basketball. I love this Iowa State team. I don't think it was a fluke last year. I think they're going to run it back.
I'm very interested in a great defense. I was a doubter of TJ Otzelberger. Felt like he took over a South Dakota State team that was already built with NBA players or NBA talent, which is weird to say for a Summit team. Zeke Mayo, who we already mentioned on this podcast. Of course, Mike Daum, the Dominator, if anyone remembers him. But he's been a great fit at Iowa State. Seems like he's going to stay there a long time, previous assistant. And that team was so dominant. I mean, they're basically playing at home the entire Big 12 tournament. So that's huge. And it's a great sign. Nate Heisey, also a kind of under the radar name that he took from Northern Iowa, good 3-point shooter. So I really like this team. Doesn't have the flash that you'd probably be looking for in a tournament title pick, but I think the defense is there. We'll just see if they can score enough in the NCAA tournament. We'll move next to the UConn Huskies, 9-1 odds, but Ben has them as his 4th ranked team in the NCAA tournament title race. What do you have for, considering your 11-0 NCAA tournament pick last year, or picks every day that we recorded a podcast at Big East Ben won a NCAA tournament best bet. And I think literally he just picked UConn the last 4 times they played. And it worked really well. And I see no reason that will stop.
Last 3 times.
3 times. Okay.
Yeah, you give that speech and you make it seem like I picked UConn every game. It was last 3 times. But yes, UConn number 4. You hear that, Dan? Number 4. 3 less than 1.
Ooh.
And honestly, this is like a 22nd, 23rd ranked roster. And I'm sick of people. I'm sick of people glazing Alex Karaban and saying he's a first-team All-American. The guy shot 37% from 3 last year with that ball movement and a freaking giant in the center of the paint. Like, given the environment, those aren't great numbers. The backcourt, Diarra and Solo Ball combined 9 points a game last year. Okay, everyone talks about how great Solo Ball is. How do you know? You never saw him. Samson Johnson is no Klingon.
No, he's not.
And Liam McNeely, you better be ready. Because Stephon Castle had the benefit of 4 other guys who could absolutely play together, and there was nights he could take off, and you wouldn't know he was on the court. You're going to have to come to play every day, my dude. You're going to have to come to play every day for this team to be good. Jalen Stewart kind of scares me. He might emerge as a pretty decent ball player. He absolutely torched Marquette in the Big East tournament in like a 6-minute stretch. And then you got Aiden Mahaney, the St. Mary's transfer. I honestly think he'll be starting. They have him coming off the bench right now, but he's a good player. He'll be starting. But back to my point, I'm giving Dan Hurley a ton of credit, and you can't. Why shouldn't you at this point? Back-to-back is really hard to do. I don't think they do it a third time, but UConn's UConn. Hurley's Hurley. They'll probably win the Big East. Whatever.
You sound defeated, and we haven't even started the season yet. It begins in 4 more days, but we'll get there soon enough. Of course, you'll be with us with the Need for Seeds college basketball podcast presented by pregame.com. I want to make sure to get a promo code out to you in case you're not listening all the way to the end. I know you might want to stare at us, whatever we're posting on video, we'll see. But use promo code CBB college basketball. Charlie Boy 75. Save $75 on CBB college basketball season access. Discounted subscription available now for $500 instead of the $575. Get every single college basketball best bet from yours truly and whoever else is on the pregame.com website putting out college basketball picks. And you get it all the way through March Madness, through the Madness, through the Final Four, all the way to the title game, which is what we're talking about today. Good for 7 days from the podcast release. So you have until the 7th of November. But make sure you don't wait. Go spend that $500, save 75. Pretty good percentage there. And get yourself on board for another winning season. We'll move next to the top 3 and at Big East Ben's list, starting with a basketball juggernaut of late, mainly known for their gridiron performance. We got Alabama 10-1 favorite, or 10-1 odds, excuse me. Usually a favorite in every football game, but I guess those days are the past. But Alabama 10-1 odds to win the national basketball championship.
And I'll admit, I was not a believer in this Tide game plan throughout the most of the season, and boy, did they prove us wrong. In March, I was there live for that game against North Carolina. They played out of their minds. 3 guys in the backcourt that shoot over 40% from 3. You got the returners, Mark Sears, National Player of the Year candidate, Latrell Wrightsell, and one of my favorite players last year, Chris Youngblood, the South Florida transfer. He shot 42%. They also bring in Cliff Omoruyi from Rutgers for the defensive presence in the middle. That guy can block shots. Grant Nelson returning as well. Then you have Aiden Holloway, that Auburn 5-star freshman who I feel like had an amazing game against Baylor in South Dakota at the Pentagon the first game, and then you never heard from him for the rest of the season. Yeah. So this roster is absolutely loaded. Do I think they can win 6 games in March? If I was a betting man, I would say no, just because there's just so much variance with their style, but they will be a force to reckon with. I think they win the SEC.
Yeah, they can beat anybody. We've seen it. They're part of the Nevada Smith fan club. No shots unless they're at the rim, unless they're 3-pointers, which to me, I feel like was something that you could easily game plan against. But I guess as more and more teams start to do it or start to use it, And of course, there's plenty of NBA tape from the Golden State Warriors and the old Houston Rockets that there's probably a lot of range for that. I think the Omoruyi ad is huge for Grant Nelson, so he doesn't have to be the big guy. We saw that Alabama just hacks everyone inside, and they probably won't have to do that this year. The incredible foul rate they had in the paint last year, I think, was a huge limiting factor. But honestly, they still went pretty far in the dance and probably do this again. Mark Sears, it's probably, I think, a lot reliant on him and what he can create. Because it seemed like there were a lot of very fortunate three-point performances that also got them far. But that can certainly happen again. As a favorite, that's all you could be, all you could want to be in the NCAA tournament. So Alabama, a 10-1 underdog, I guess. Everyone's an underdog to win the title. We'll move now to the Houston Cougars, 15-1 odds, and second at Big East Ben's top 10.
I mean, Kelvin Sampson has the playbook, man. I mean, they play lights out defense. We've known that for years. Everyone said it was going to drop off when they joined the Big 12 last year. Newsflash, same as it ever was. It worked in the American. It worked in the Big 12. Everyone is back except Jamal Shead. This team was, I feel so bad for them.
Player of the year, Big 12 player of the year, Jamal Shead.
I know. And I mean, it was a Jamal Shead ankle injury from probably a run to national championship. I would have loved to see that game. Now I think about it, UConn, Houston in the national championship. I was actually at that game, Houston versus Duke, and I was so comatose from the Marquette loss. I was just kind of staring straight ahead. I didn't even notice it. But they replace him with Milos Uzan, Oklahoma transfer. Yep. I honestly don't know a ton about his game.
Very talented, but there's a lot of respect for Oklahoma basketball players when they haven't been good for a very long time.
Well, I mean, he must fit into the game plan, because they could have gone out and got like a Pop Isaacs or a Doug McDaniel in the transfer portal. So this guy obviously fits what Sampson wants to do.
Length and a big future, I think, is what they're betting on here. But I think there's a lot of questions about how they'll defend, because to me, you don't play if you don't defend in Kelvin Sampson's system.
So his defense is suspect.
I mean, I think there's a lot suspect about him. He's shown some flashes for sure, but he probably wanted to get as far away from a Loyola Chicago backdoor cut, head basketball coach. And this is a great spot to land.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out Porter. LJ Cryer, National Player of the Year candidate. The front court is mean and tough. Juwan Roberts, Javier Francis, Terrence Arsenault off the bench. I mean, it's Houston. It's Houston ball. They're number 2. I had them at number 1 until a couple days ago. I'll talk more about that later. But yeah,
Cougars. We'll talk about that right now, actually. And I got to say, it's still amazing to me, the apostrophes that in that front court of Houston, Juwan Roberts and Javier Francis, they are, I mean, Francis is young, but I guess as a senior now. Roberts, I thought was graduated 4 years ago until I was at the Big 12 tournament last year. Just kidding. But feels like he's been in Houston jerseys forever. And I guess with NIL and COVID extensions, these careers will never end. But Houston's going to be a tough out. They were really nice to bet against the first 2 games of the Big 12 conference play last season. But then they went on quite a rampage until that final in the Big 12 title game. Last but not least, we have number 1 at Big East Ben's top 10 as we start the Need for Seeds on the pregame.com podcast network. And without further ado, we will go to the Duke Blue Devils, 10-1 odds to win the title. So not favored according to the brainiacs at DraftKings, as UConn at 9-1, though certainly when you win 2 in a row and are undefeated against the spread in the NCAA tournament, whether Big East Ben picks you the last 3 games or not, we're looking at Duke as the favorite. Surprise, surprise.
So Griffin, on Sunday afternoon, I'm sitting on my couch. I'm watching the NFL. All my bets are losing.
Wait, the NFL? I figured you were watching college basketball tape.
Well, so I looked at
what
other options are. And I said, Arizona State, Duke, televised scrimmage. Let's check this out. And holy moly, was I blown away by Duke. So guys, I know there's a lot of hype around him. I know there's, this guy's going to be the greatest thing since Zion Williams, the 5-star freshman from the northern part of the country. You all know his name. I guess I'll just say it. Of course, I'm talking about Con Knipple. Oh my God, can he shoot? He's incredible. I haven't seen it. Reminding you just Zach Gold or Jack Golke? Jack Golke.
Yeah, from
Jack Golke in the
Oakland.
tournament. Just coming off screens, fading away, splash, splash, splash. He is awesome. He is awesome. I mean, Cooper Flag's great. Cooper Flag was as expected, but Con Knipple, holy crap, can he catch fire? And they are going to be dangerous. Malik Brown, you got Malik Brown inside providing some strength. You got Tyrese Proctor back at the point guard. They're tall, man. I mean, they go 6'6" to 6'9", 1 through 5. You got Mason Gillis coming off the bench to transfer from Purdue. I always thought was a really good player that didn't get as much shine, to be being overshadowed by Edey, Lawyer, and Smith. You also notice I didn't put Purdue in my top 10. But yeah, this Duke team's rolling. I hate Duke more than the next guy, but this is going to be a special team.
Yeah, I think my biggest question for Duke is the man that's running the program, John Scheyer. I don't know necessarily how much coaches matter to a certain extent, but I think they do when you're trying to win big, important games end of season. We'll see how Duke performs. I mean, I felt like they were pretty fortunate with their NCAA tournament schedule last season, but that's a big question. And this Cooper Flag guy seems like a pretty interesting name that you haven't mentioned just yet.
I did. I said he was as advertised.
As advertised.
Okay. He does look like, especially with the camera angle, like he just looks like another guy out there. Like you wouldn't expect it. Obviously I saw the Peach Jam tape and the Team USA blocking Anthony Davis, hitting the three. I saw all that, but yeah, you wouldn't just looking at the tape, you wouldn't expect anything. But he can play. He's gonna National Player of the Year. No, but he'll be good.
Okay. Cooper Flag, not National Player of the Year.
Janai Broom.
343 teams times 12 or 15, and then we can find another one. -1, Cooper Flag. You heard it here first. At Big East Ben said will not win Player of the Season. So that is the top 10 from At Big East Ben on this inaugural episode of the Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast presented by the pregame.com podcast network. It's time to get into our best bets, which we're going with our futures for this season. I'll give it the reins to At Big East Ben to give to wax poetic as long as he'd like, because it looks like we've about 6 more minutes left before this timer times out. And then I'll come back with my long shot title winner possibility, and we'll get you all ready for next week and the start of the college basketball season.
Mine's decently long. I talked about this team at pretty good extent earlier in the show. It is the Kentucky Wildcats. Grabbed them at 35-1. I already grabbed them back in June before the Jackson Robinson transfer news was announced at 45-1. Like I said, Pope, shooters, ball team, cohesiveness. I love this Kentucky team. I think they're going to be really special. And it's going to erase memories of these early NCAA tournament flameouts by Johnny Calipari the last few years.
Thank you for a reminder. I did pick Kentucky to win the national championship last year in all my brackets and had a really good bracket, except when you don't pick the title winner to even win a single game. That does limit your abilities to finish in the money, unfortunately. My curiosity is just what you think about Mark Pope as he enters a very new ground as head coach of Kentucky.
Not new.
As a coach.
You don't think?
You think from Utah Valley State to BYU that there's not a step up in interest in the program? BYU does have its own television network, but I mean,
they love him, dude. Do you see the madness? He convinced the coach of another team to come out and wear the warm-up jerseys of Kentucky. I mean, they have his full support.
Didn't they just give Coach Cal a coach for life contract?
How'd that work out?
That's my question. Like it all seems really nice until the ball is bouncing and you're losing in triple overtime to James Madison. Okay.
This isn't a Billy Gillispie situation. Okay. This isn't a Billy Gillespie situation.
Well,
I guarantee
you
it.
do know, I hope that Mark Pope is more faithful to his wife and spends less time in a hot tub with Kentucky undergrads. So, for my best bet on this inaugural Need for Seeds college basketball podcast, as anyone who's listened to this podcast, I think it's my 5th year doing it. In the past with AJ Hoffman, I came in hot. And usually the way I do it is I look for long shots. There's a team that's 75-1 right now, which, I think we'll get a lot of publicity on this podcast as we go through the season. And it feels like to me that the trajectory has grown ever since, you could argue a big Final Four run, then a couple flameouts in what's now coming a much bigger football program back to the past glory days, if you will. But we're not really ever a basketball powerhouse and looks like they're headed the other way. Well, once upon a time, this university decided to trade their head coach for free to try to get him out of the building and onto another campus. Well, things have gone really, really well for the team that received the head coach in the trade, while the team that made the trade hired a head coach who choked his fiance and then had to fire him and pay out his entire contract.
Oh my God.
Brilliant. And then hired a incapable assistant because he made a deep NCAA tournament run. So it's weird for me to be in this position, but it does feel like there's a lot of value on one of at Big East Ben's top 10 teams. They come in number 8 on at Big East Ben's top 10 list. I will go with Marquette Golden Eagles, a 75-1 number to win the national title. And all I can say is MU rah rah, MU rah 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 rah.
2 years in a row, one of us has picked them.
Well, all I know is I've seen a 2 seed and then a 2 seed when they lost and had a lot of injury problems. But I like the growth. I think there's a big target on the UConn back that could potentially provide some decent victories to get even higher seeds. And who knows if Marquette goes on a deep run? They've shown it in the past. Clearly, the arrow is pointing up, and that's your 75-1 long shot in at Big East Ben's top 10 coming in at number 8. So grab at Marquette 75-1, Kentucky 35-1 as our long shot picks for this first episode. And make sure before I forget to mention it, use the promo code CBB75 to save $75 on all access the entire season from game 1 on Monday, November 4th, as early as ever, all the way through the March Madness, Final Four, and championship games. Go throw that in there. CBB Charlie Boy 75, and you save $75 on a season-long subscription. That'll be the first episode of the Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast. We'll see if I can get a bit better or bigger of a background next time. And at Big East Ben, we'll try to get some flowers that have been at least alive once in their existence.